Hello and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania,
where we discuss history and haunts.
Today's story takes us to my hometown, well, kind of hometown, I moved there in 3rd grade. I'm Sara.
I'm Erica.
Let's get into it. So, as I said, this story comes from where I spent the majority of life that I remember, let's say. Moved in 3rd grade to Penn Township, all the way in eastern PA. And this is about a building that has been closed since I lived there.
Okay.
In my memory. Maybe it was open a few years. And it's called the Red Rose Inn.
Ooh.
It's located on the corner of a pretty major stoplight. You have to go through the stoplight to get to one of the 2 grocery stores nearby. So people frequent this all the time.
Okay.
And I had heard from locals that this place was haunted. People had weddings there. Like, it seems like it was a very nice place.
Oh.
In addition to being an inn, it had that restaurant. And it had a bar as well. I never personally got to experience any of the hauntings. If I was less of a good kid, maybe I would have broken in. But also it was owned by the Township. So not someone you probably want to mess with. And right on a major intersection.
Right, like that's very visible.
Right.
I'm surprised it was closed, being like that it was like right in the main part of the
so
town.
the last owners, I guess, they didn't have enough business, they couldn't keep up, so they let it sit abandoned for a while, and that's when the Township bought it.
Gotcha, okay.
So speaking of the history of it, it's on a segment of land which is 5,000 acres, originally owned by William Penn.
Oh.
He then sold it, and legend has it that the first lease was a single rose to be paid annually on June 24th.
That's so cute.
Yeah, hence the name Red Rose Inn. Yeah. So it was also located on Native American land. There was a trail that was used for trade that went right past the inn.
Okay.
And so that'll be a major part of when we talk about the ghosts. Since it was originally given away by William Penn, there was an inn created on it. It changed hands a few times. It operated as an inn, a tavern, etc. But as I said, it sat vacant for many years until Penn Township decided to purchase it because it has been around basically since the start of America.
Right.
And has significant historical relevance, I guess, and they wanted to preserve it. Since I've moved away, I believe it was last year or earlier this year, it opened as a museum. So you can actually go in. They have a bunch of things on Penn Township and on the inn itself.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So
that's great.
No longer a tavern, but at least it's been preserved.
Right.
And again, locals had very fond stories of it, so I'm happy that even for the people that live in that area, it's been preserved.
Right, it's nice that it's not just kind of like boarded up.
Right.
I mean, it was a huge, obviously, thing, I'm sure, at the time,
Yeah.
so good that they're getting some sort of use out of it.
Right. So now the ghosts. We have 2 main ghosts that have, at least 2 ghosts that have names there. So the first is Emily. And she's seen wearing a dress. She's a little girl. She has ringlet curls, and she sometimes carries a doll with her. With Emily, we have Joe, and he was a Native American boy, teenage years more of, that lived at the same time as Emily.
Okay.
As the story goes, Emily was found murdered, and the villagers accused Joe because he'd given her a string of beads earlier in the day.
Well, that's
jumping.
Yes, that's a huge jump. Did they think that the thing was cursed or something? Is that what?
I'm sure it's just prejudice and, different times.
Right.
But as punishment and without a trial, they hung him from a tree on the corner of the property.
Oh my God.
And they felt justified doing it for, I'm sure, reasons we cannot understand in this day and age.
Right.
And later, they discovered that the killer was a drunk who was in the nearby woods, and he had murdered Emily, stumbled into the woods, and passed out. To conceal the wrongdoing, they wrapped Joe in a white sheet and buried him in the cellar wall of the inn.
I don't know how that's honoring him in any way, shape, or form, or how that makes up for what they did.
Not at all.
No.
I think they're just like, oh man,
we
just killed
up.
someone.
Right.
Yeah. So those are the two ghosts that have names in the inn, clearly tied to it due to their deaths.
Right.
Emily is said to be a very positive, happy spirit, and she frequents high traffic areas.
Okay.
She's seen in the dining room, staircase, and notably in the women's bathrooms.
Oh.
Yeah, very, very strange.
Yes.
They've also reported seeing her looking out the windows onto Baltimore Pike, which is the road that goes past. And like I said, this is at a stoplight. So you could really easily sit at that stoplight and see a kid in the window of a when I was there, of a boarded up building.
Right.
And be completely shocked.
Right. I mean, I honestly, if I had seen that, I would think about calling like the authorities to be like, hey, I think a child is trapped up in the top floor.
For some reason wearing ringlet curls and a nice dress.
Yes.
But I would have too. I have never seen her. I think if I knew that you could see her from the road, I would have driven past very slowly and hated that red light a lot less.
Right.
But I did not know that. And Joe, as expected, roams the basement area.
Okay.
And a lot of the sightings come from the staff back in like the supply rooms, etc. And he is said to be a much less happy spirit. He fills the room with negative energy.
Which makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are the two main ghosts that haunt the inn. But there have been additional sightings throughout of people. Notably, in the 80s, a bartender was closing up and he saw a woman in a coat standing by the bar, and she looked to be waiting to order a drink from him. But he knew that they had already closed and locked all the doors, so he asked her how she got in. As he walked over to her, the ghost turned to look at him and vanished when the ghost heard the question.
Well, that's terrifying.
I know.
I can't imagine. First of all, just locking up and seeing somebody in your place of business while you're the only person there is already terrifying if they're real.
Right.
But then walking up to it and having it vanish, honestly, I don't know which I would prefer. I don't know if I would prefer it to be a real person, or I don't know if I would want it to be a ghost.
Right. And I'm sure at the end of a long shift, your eyes are playing, you think maybe your eyes are playing tricks on you. But
yes, knowing
that the place is so haunted, I'm sure he had no doubt what he saw.
Right.
I don't know if I could go back to work the next day.
No, definitely
or at least
not.
Maybe not the closing shift.
No.
Yeah.
I'd open, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. If I wasn't alone. The good news is overall the activity is not violent in nature, but occasionally there are reports of objects thrown off the bar or just against walls in general, and mirrors and windows shattering. And these are, rightfully so, believed to be done by Joe out of anger at the people that live in the area. Because the idea of descendants, etc.
Yes, yeah.
Another common thing that occurs is electronic interruptions. So things like cell phones not quite working well, radios turning off, not things so much turning on, but turning off.
Okay.
And the thought is that these are really foreign to Emily and Joe because they lived so long ago that they didn't have the technology that we have. So instead of trying to understand it, it's like off. Right. I don't know what this is.
Yes.
I heard growing up always that there was a piano that played by itself. So not electronic because it was a real piano, not a keyboard, but I guess similar in like an object being affected. Now I did hear from many people that they thought it was like a spoof ghost piano that was rigged to play on its own. But again, knowing that the place is so haunted, who's to say?
Right, and that seems like a lot of work for something that was boarded up.
Right,
you know,
well, it was when it was an inn.
Oh, I see what you're saying, you're saying. But yeah, I feel like that's...
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, that would involve the owners really leaning into the dark history of the inn and the fact that it's haunted, which I don't know that anybody did.
Right. I do feel like if they did lean in, that's a little disrespectful to the memory of Joe and Emily, just because that was such a terrible happening there. So hopefully that's not what it is.
Yeah. So most of the ghosts we've talked about have been, in the restaurant part, not really, or the basement, not really in the inn part with the rooms. So there is an anonymous firsthand account, and I'll just read it word from word. When we first arrived to our room, the radio came on immediately. 10 minutes later, the toilet seat closed on its own. There were only 4 rooms upstairs, and we were the only guests. Small 1800-like single beds, so we slept separately. My wife claimed in the morning something was pulling her covers off of her in the middle of the night. Definite spirits in the building.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could do. First of all, the toilet seat had to make a really loud bang.
Yes.
Because it likely wasn't plastic modern material. It was probably like that like porcelain stuff. So that must have been terrifying. And the sheets.
Yeah.
Also the fact that they were sleeping in separate beds, which reminds me a bit of that Shroot Farms episode from The Office. But I would feel even less safe in a bed on my own.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if that was the case, David and I would be fitting into a twin bed.
Right.
Which, for anybody listening that doesn't know, my husband is 6'4" and I'm 5'11". So that would be pretty comical to fit us both in a bed. But again, as I always say, it's good to look at things through a skeptic's lens.
Right.
So breaking it down, the radio came on. That could be faulty wiring or, a myriad of reasons.
Yes.
Toilet seat closing, maybe the maid left it up and then it's heavy because it's porcelain, like you said, so gravity. Would that happen right at the time that they get there? That's a little finicky.
Right.
The thing I can't get past personally is the sheets.
Yes.
How do you explain that?
No, there's no way that anything pulls sheets except for like some kind of spirit or something.
Yeah. And there's no one even in bed with you.
Right. That's oh my God, I didn't even think about that. But yeah.
It's not your spouse stealing your sheets.
Right.
It's
just like
what the
annoying.
heck is happening? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't like that.
So again, this place is currently open to the public as a museum.
Okay.
And as always, we want to answer the question on this podcast. Would you visit this place of paranormal phenomena?
Yeah, I think I would. I think most of the activity has not been violent, which is great. Right. Like my life does not feel like it would be at risk.
Yeah.
And also Joe's anger is completely understandable.
Yeah.
So that part is just, I feel like I would feel sad, like thinking about his past. So yeah, I definitely would. It feels like it was like a little quaint place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it is. Like,
yeah.
It's cute.
Yeah.
We'll have to look at pictures of it. I personally would love to go. As someone growing up there that always wanted to go. And we both love history. That's part of why we do this.
Yes.
And it has history not just on the inn, but other areas in Penn Township. My question that I'm wondering about is if the ghost sightings will persist or if they were linked to the fact that it was an inn and tavern.
That's a good question, because this is like something that I've always wondered. Like I have never personally experienced like a full ghost encounter, but as somebody who loves history, like I've been to these places before. I've been to museums, I've been to Gettysburg, and like all of these like supposed really haunted places that I've never had these experiences with, and I wonder if it is kind of based on what the thing is at the time. Like, does a museum take out... Like, it shouldn't. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Right, but how are you going to be a ghost ordering a drink at a bar in a museum?
Right, that's true. That's true.
And, I mean, I think, like, Emily and Joe, because they're so not tied to the activities there, just the physical location, I think they could easily stay. But some of the patrons or, like, the haunting of the people that stayed there, that has to go away. Right. People will only be there for a short time now to look at the exhibits.
Right. And there's probably no radio. Like that the anonymous perspective, there's likely not radios in there anymore, if it's not really a room. So yeah, that's an interesting question. I wonder. Yeah.
So I think we would both visit.
Yes, definitely. Especially as a museum.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of Paranormal in Pennsylvania. Tune in next Thursday to catch our next investigation.